Hey guys. So in this video, this is more like of a lecture format. I'm still gonna show you some poses, but I'm gonna talk more. This is really basically just intended to give you the most basic general guidelines for your yoga practice as a pregnant woman, which is like, oh yeah, I'm pregnant. You're a goddess right now, right? So, because of that, because you're pregnant and you're this goddess who is like growing another human being in your belly, as crazy as it sounds, it's happening. You may want to adapt your yoga practice to this wonder. We're all individuals, like no one is like the other, right? That's why we all come with different sets of like conditions and previous experience when it comes to our yoga practice. Our bodies are all different, and now also our pregnancies are different, right? We may have different like issues going on. So just keep in mind that this is an individual practice, and yes, I can say basic rules and guidelines and yays and nays, right? And tips and tricks. But in the end, you are in your body. You know your body, and you know the inner voice in your body. You know your intuition. You really know what's right and wrong. And additional to that, I want you to really listen to it, but also additionally get the consent of your midwife, of your doctor, that yoga is a good idea for you. Yeah? Okay, so let's just start. If you have heard of the bandhas in yoga, the bandhas are locks. They're like locking in energy in a certain way, and we have like 3 bandhas: the Jalandhara bandha, the Uddiyana bandha, and the Mula bandha. So the throat, the belly, and the anus, or like root lock, root bandha. And you don't want to use the belly bandha, the Uddiyana bandha, because it engages the belly and it locks in and it constricts the area, and we don't want to do that. Yeah, we want to keep everything supple and loose and wide, and really don't manipulate in that area. Yeah, because something magical is happening here, and you just want to basically really leave it alone. Yeah, and let it just do what it does, without interfering and without tightening that space, really. And that leads me to abdominal work. Maybe you have heard of, when you're pregnant and also after birth, you don't really want to use the six-pack muscles, the abdominis recti, because there's the risk of developing a diastasis recti, which basically is a dislocation between the connective tissue and the muscles. And the connective tissue during pregnancy just gets weakened. It gets like stretched out because it has to, right? We're growing a belly. It has to. So they have to give in. And because of this connective tissue is basically weak, we don't want to add to that. Yeah? Because the weaker it gets, the higher the risk after birth of developing or having a diastasis recti. So what further weakens that is if we overstretch it even more, or if we do like ab work, like the crunches, kind of like ab work, like the six-pack ab work. Yeah. What you can do though in terms of ab work is you can work on the transverse abdominis and the obliques. And the transverse abdominis are amazing because they help to support your back, they help to stabilize your pelvis, and they assist during birth. So the transverse abdominis, just to mention that so you know, are a corset muscle. It's a deeper layer of muscle than the rectus abdominis, so it's underneath and it wraps basically around your torso. And like activating this muscle is really good. Like this is what we want when we're pregnant. There's also a breath that helps activate that muscle, or like strengthen that muscle. And it's called the WHO breath, WHO. And it goes, you take a deep inhale through the nose, and you exhale. Really all the way out, and you will feel your belly button kind of just draw inward, inward, inward on the exhalation. And this is a breath that activates the corset. And you can do this breath in poses also, right? Bird dog, for example, a half plank, for example, yeah? And these are just examples, but then you can also even add the breath, the WHO breath to it. If you are like in a bird dog, for example, let's say right leg, left arm. Really, really great way to just have this activation of your corset muscle with the breath and the pose. Yeah. Obliques, for example, obliques also good. In general, strengthening the side body is great because it just helps you kind of still feel like you still can feel your core, but you're not like, you know, working through the six-pack muscles. The obliques are a safe way, and for example, in gate pose, you would want to pad your knee, by the way, yeah? But for example, in gate pose, yeah, this is here, oblique strength, and the other way as well. This is just an example, so you know what kind of muscles we're talking about. Okay, yeah, and so speaking of obliques and side body is really a great way. Like you can still like move through side body activation and lengthening, which is great. The lengthening because we create more space. Like in a side bend, for example, here, creating more space here, we're opening like the sides of the rib cage, which helps us send the breath in there, so we're more flexible in the intercostals. So we can breathe more into the rib cage, which is really helpful because we want to sustain a full, complete breath when we're pregnant, but oftentimes it's hard through the belly because, you know, it's constricted. We don't have a lot of room there. So if we can use the sides of the rib cage and the back body as well, that's just a great way to still have a deep breath. Yeah, I want to talk now also about twists. Twisting is great and it's fun, but let's be honest, when we're pregnant, it's probably one of the last things we want to do. You know, twists, for example, this one, you can see like everything is really constricted here, or like a twisted chair, or a twisted high lunge. There is, you know, like a lot of like constriction in your belly going on, plus it's like strenuous, and you know, you have to hold like a lot of tension in your abdominal area. We don't really want to do that. If you just think of your belly as your baby's home, and you come in and you kind of twist in there and like wrap it around like you're wrapping out a towel, you kind of don't want to do that, yeah? So what you can do though, it's not like you cannot twist at all, but it is a great way of actually relearning how we want to twist in the first place. Because in the first place, honestly, in twists, oftentimes we're leading with our ego, which means, I'm just demonstrating it in this easy seated twist now. Oftentimes, we come into the twist like this, and then we push with this hand as far back as it gets, right? Just to get really deep into the twist. But we're not really twisting mindfully. We bringing the breath with us, having a long spine, sitting upright, and really coming into the twist, just kind of like from our muscular capability. Oftentimes in twists, we're really leading with the ego to just squeeze out the most range of motion. And actually, that's never really what we want to do, yeah? And so now, when you're pregnant, you want to come into a really mild, easy twist where you don't push and push, where you mainly focus the twist in the neck and the chest area, yeah? And you really want to try to lead with your intuition and forget the loud voice of the ego. So, for example, I just showed an easy twist, not with crossing the arm over. We don't really want to cross anything in front of the belly, like when we're pregnant, right? So you leave the left hand on the left knee. You can circle the right arm up and around just to get that length of the spine, crown of the head reaching up. Place the right hand kind of like diagonally behind you, or a little bit more behind you, but really try to be mindful of, are you trying to push yourself open with the hands? And you kind of want to not do that. And then you can just look back and try to just twist more in the upper chest and neck area, right? Like these are twists that you can still do. And then bring the breath to it. So let the breath help again open the sides of the rib cage and just get that stretch out of there. So I would say like an easy seated twist without much pushing, right? Focus on the upper chest and the neck is fine. That's for twists. And now I want to talk about forward bends and back bends. So forward bends are fine, naturally, right? But you want to reduce the range of motion. You don't want to squish the belly, right? Just keep space there. So for example, that goes for seated and standing forward folds. So for example, if you come to, which we come into a lot, into like an Uttanasana forward fold, you may, first of all, you want to bring the feet out quite wide apart, at least hip width distance, maybe wider. You want to have room for the belly. And then you may want to rest the elbows on the thighs, which I think is super comfortable. It really releases the lower back, and you want to let your head hang, right? So this is a really great pose. Or you take 2 blocks, and I really suggest when you're pregnant that you invest in blocks and just always have 2 blocks ready for your asana practice, and you can rest your hands on the highest setting of the block, right? And then just let your head hang, bend in the knees, and that's your forward fold. Yeah? Yeah, so forward folds, legs wide, right? And then support yourself, like your upper body, resting on blocks or elbows on thighs. So that you just always leave enough room for your belly and that there's not too much pressure on the belly, right? That is important. And then back bends. So you do not want to do back bends that are too intense or too strenuous, where you tend to either fall into your lower back or where we overstretch the front body, which again, linea alba, connective tissue between the rectus abdominis, we don't want to overstretch it, like additionally stretch it to, it stretches anyway already, right? We don't want to like add to that, which, because it can lead to diastasis recti. So what I would recommend, try really to do very mild back bends. And that goes even for a cow pose, yeah? So if you're used to like doing very exaggerated cat-cows, like the cat you don't really want to do anyway because of the rectus abdominis, yeah? And then the cow, right, if you're used to doing it really a lot, like I'm doing it right now, a good practice for you may be, instead of going into this cow back bend where you see I'm in the back bend like with my entire spine, cervical to lower back. How about if you try to keep your cervical spine and thoracic spine stable and you just practice pelvic tilt. Inhale, shine your sit bones up and back. Exhale, lengthen tailbone away from crown of the head. Can you see? Inhale, exhale. Yeah? So it's really very, very mild. So there's no stretching in your front body, and you're focusing more on pelvic tilts instead of the entire spine. Yeah. Also, back bending, for example, if you're standing, I'm just standing on my knees now to show you, but if you're standing and you're like in sun salutations, you may always like do really exaggerated back bend. But how about if you just focus on bringing your gaze up and lifting your heart up, right? Or you can come into a camel pose with a block between your thighs, press the block, activate the inner thighs, bring the hands behind you on the sacrum, reaching the tailbone down to the ground, draw the elbows together and just lift your sternum toward your chin, right? And you can look up to the ceiling. And there's not much more needed. This is a back bend. You get all the benefits. You get a chest opener. You get like energetic, kind of uplifting energy benefit from it as well. Yeah, that's what back bends do. They were like energizing. So reduce the range of motion in back bends. Good. How about inversions? So you do not want to do poses where there is a risk of falling out. There is a risk of falling out in handstand, in headstand, in forearm stand, even in shoulder stand. And you really don't want to fall. You want to make sure that this is never, ever, ever happening. Your baby doesn't like earthquakes at all. Of course, it is individual, right? So listen to yourself, right? And make your choice, obviously. But I'm just saying, if there is a risk of falling out, and if you're not 100% sure, really just don't bother. Inversions do have certain benefits though. So there is inversions that you can do safely. Inversions that I would recommend that are mild are supported bridge or Viparita Karani, and preferably after week 20 or 30. If you're not comfortable with lying on your back, you can just prop up your torso. So like elevate the torso. And I have a video demonstrating that actually. I say that because there is something called the vena cava syndrome, and the vena cava runs next to your spine on the right side, and this vein basically returns blood from the lower body back to the heart. And if we squish that, because it can get squished with all the weight of the baby and everything kind of dropping down, it can lead to symptoms like nausea, dizziness, or palpitations. So you just really want to, if you're not comfortable lying on your back, it might be because of the vena cava, and then a solution for that is propping up your torso, so elevate the torso, or lying on your side, right? In Viparita Karani, that's not really possible, so we elevate the torso. Yeah, and I think that's really kind of it. I wanted to give you this overview so you at least have heard of those common general kind of tips and tricks or yays and nays, right? And I always kind of wanted to make sure I don't just say what you kind of want to avoid in general, but always tell you what you actually can do or can do more of, because it's actually really good. I just want to actually add one more thing to the inversions. They have benefits, right? And that's why I mentioned those two poses. Inversions in general help the return blood flow, and they help to prevent varicose veins. So it is good to do that when you're pregnant, but you want to do the mild versions. What I want to say also is you want to also reduce the range of motion in general because of relaxin. So relaxin is a hormone that we have, and it's really necessary during pregnancy. It prepares our body for pregnancy, for the growing belly, for everything. And it relaxes literally connective tissue, muscles, tendons, ligaments. Relaxin also leads to our joints being less stable because of that, right? There's less holding from the ligaments and tendons and muscles, so they become just less stable. And because our muscles relax more, we can just tend to fall deeper into poses. And some of us may think, I like more stretchy and more flexible, which is a hype, right? Like people think it's necessary to be a good yogi if you're more flexible, which is not true. And now is really a time to think of, okay, I want to reduce the range of motion and I actually don't want to go all the way into a stretch because I may actually hurt myself. And I don't have that ability. My body cannot really tell me at the moment through like feedback, right, that I'm actually too deep in a pose. So I may just really think of not pushing it all the way, holding back a little bit. Yeah, okay. I think really that's it. And I hope this helps you to be empowered and move through your yoga practice with a mindset of open curiosity, of what can I explore, what's new, how can I dance with my baby in a safe way. And I really want you to have fun with it. And again, this is a great time to listen to your intuition and stand in your own power and, be really joyful in this glowy, like beautiful state that you're in. And also, even if you have complications and you don't feel at the top of things, maybe remembering that something magical and huge is happening inside of you, a wonder, may help you to actually still feel this sense of self-compassion and awe to what's going on right now.